Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Tracy's Tuesday Talks. I have an incredibly special guest with me, fellow financial coach and IRS enrolled agent Kristine Stevenson, who is a best-selling author and also helps people with their IRS trouble. So, Kristine, thank you so much for joining me today. It is such an honor to have you.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm thrilled to be here. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, yes, yes. So tell me real quick, what is an IRS enrolled agent?
Yes, great opening question. So, an enrolled agent, the EA after my name, that's a credential. It's the highest credential awarded by the IRS to a civilian person such as myself that allows me to practice before the IRS. I can represent any individual or business on any tax matter in front of the IRS. So I negotiate tax debt settlements for individuals and businesses.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
basically what you do, it almost sounds a little bit like a lawyer in the sense of like you're stepping in and representing people before the IRS.
Were you going to say the KGB?
I was going to say the KJB.
Wow. Ooh, there's some Freudian thing there, I'm sure.
Taking a page out of Dave Ramsey's book. So what led you to become an IRS enrolled agent?
Oh, great question. So I have been a tax practitioner preparing tax returns for many years off and on. I worked for H&R Block off and on for many tax seasons. I used to work for Intuit, the makers of TurboTax, and I've had my own practice preparing tax returns. And I was aware of this field, this in the industry, in the tax industry, it's called tax resolution. It's a very niche, small group of people that do this kind of work. And I was intrigued by it because I I enjoy, for lack of a better term, going up against the IRS, advocating on behalf of other people. Exactly. I enjoy advocating on behalf of other people. And the IRS is this cold, relentless behemoth that just kind of marches on without real regard necessarily for the people that are struggling to deal with their IRS issues. I thought, wow, I want to do that. And so to represent people, you have to be a lawyer or a CPA, or the third option is an enrolled agent. And I'm not interested in going to law school. I really don't like accounting per se. I know how to read a cash flow statement and profit and loss and things like that. But the enrolled agent, I already had all this tax knowledge, tax law. And I thought, well, let me study for the exam. And there are 3 exams you have to pass on business, personal, and on ethics. And then I could be awarded my credential, which would allow me to practice. And that's what I did about 5 years ago. I'm coming up on 5 years with my enrolled agent.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So who do you typically serve?
Oh, well, I don't know if there's a typical person I serve, but I get a combination of both individuals and businesses. Most businesses I serve, honestly, they have payroll tax issues. They're not getting their monthly federal tax deposits to the IRS. They're not sending in their Form 941. And if you're a business owner and you're listening to this, I know you know what I'm talking about. So they have payroll issues that are going on, and sometimes they don't get their their business tax return in, like their 1120, their Form 1120 or 1120S, or if they're in a partnership, something like that. So I have about half businesses I serve, and then the other half is individuals, just like you and I. I have one of my very first clients was a plumber. He owes the IRS $600,000. Schedule C filer, sole proprietor. It's like, wow, 600,000. That's not insignificant. And so I help people resolve their issue. I'm not necessarily making the debt go away. Sometimes people can't pay $600,000, but I get them in this particular instance with the plumber, a small individual, a small business, but also an individual. I got him into a protected status. So the debt stays, But as long as he does certain things going forward, then he's in compliance and he's protected from adverse action by the IRS, like
What?
shutting down his business or things like that. So in this case, he's an individual. And so it ranges, it's just such a range of issues.
Yeah.
But this was what I do, is how I can help people. Liens on your house. If you got a lien on your house, I can help get rid of, subordinate, or maybe even help you get rid of that lien. So all sorts of stuff. Very interesting.
That's awesome. I know that in the past, I sent a client your way that had 4 liens against their house from the IRS, and they're just like, thank you for
Yeah.
getting us up, Kristine.
Yeah, it's a big deal. A lien, if you want to go sell your house or refinance, that lien's going to almost certainly get in the way. And so
Yeah.
then my work pushes that lien to the side and say, okay, let this other thing happen, please, IRS,
Yeah.
while we take, care of this lien over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you wrote a book.
I
You
did.
wrote the book, as
I
it
just
were.
have a copy handy.
Guys, Kristine wrote the book on literally how to avoid trouble with the IRS.
Really, yes.
So, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see people or small businesses make?
Sure. I would say most small businesses, the top issue that I see over and over again is they're not separating business money from personal money. They're commingling. And if people, business owners, small business owners, self-employed people, the Uber driver, the real estate agent, if they would create a separate business account to funnel their business money that they're making into that account, that would be huge. That'd be a really big deal, because then all the things that come from commingling your money, getting it all mixed up, it makes it so much more clear. And you have money set aside to send the IRS. That's the second big issue. Okay, maybe they've opened the business account. Fantastic. But they're not sending money to the IRS as a quarterly self-employment tax payment, for instance. That's the big thing. Realtors are notorious. They make great money when these checks come in, the commission checks. Yay, they got all this money, but they're not setting it aside necessarily. And even if they do, they're not sending it to the IRS. So those are the two big issues: creating the separate account and then get the money to the IRS.
Yeah.
Bar none. Those are the two big issues.
And I've heard somewhere, if you can speak more into this, awesome. If not, that's okay too. I heard that if you do have this separate bank accounts, and let's just say you have an LLC, so you have that protection in place for like separating your business assets from your personal finances. If you use your business finances to buy personal stuff, or personal finances in your business, it's called piercing the corporate veil.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's a little bit more complex of a tax subject, but there is and this has more to do maybe with a bigger what's called an entity, like an S corp. Okay, some people form an LLC, which does protect their business from their personal assets, as you would say. Whatever the value of the business is protected from the personal. And sometimes individuals or other circumstances happen, and they're piercing the corporate veil. They're able to go after the personal. It doesn't stop at the business level. And that's a little bit more in depth of a conversation to dive into, that I would not be ready to dive into in this moment. Piercing the corporate veil is going past that protection into the personal, going after the personal assets.
Gotcha. That clarifies a little bit more. That clarifies for me.
Yeah, that's a separate conversation.
Gotcha. So what are some of the tax tips that you have for people in small businesses, besides make sure you pay your taxes, people?
Right. Yeah, well, it's okay. So number one, create that business account. And I would say a checking and a savings account. Okay. Have a creative business budget. You're a coach like me. We work with a lot of personal individuals in their budget, but it's super important to have a business budget as well. And a system I like to use is the Profit First system. I use it myself. I like to teach that to us. Hey, look, coincidentally, Mike McAllowitz, if you're watching this, free promo here for you on
Right.
Profit First. We a lot of us coaches like his book. So setting up that, creating the budget, and then another tip is creating a line item in your budget for taxes. So you're setting money aside to send the IRS. And how do you send the IRS? Thank you for asking. How do you send the IRS money, Tracy? Thank you for
How do you send
asking.
the IRS money?
The other tip is set up an account through EFTPS, the Electronic Federal Tax Payment System. That's a free website. It's very easy to make an account. It's pretty much your name, your address, phone number, your EIN or your SSN. And you set up this account. You can set up as an individual or as a business. And then you can transmit money to the IRS simply, easily, quickly, affordably. It's just super great. And then you're getting the money to the IRS. And so the money's there. And when you go to file your tax return, then you get credit for sending that money in. And it really works in your favor to have those estimated payments in. So that's a huge thing, to set up that account with EFTPS. Those honestly, those are the big ones. I think the other one I would say is the importance of tracking not just your income, but your expenses. As business owners, we have many more expense items leaving our accounts than we have typically, like, and I'm talking about the volume of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot more expense transactions than income transactions. We get income however often we get it, during the month as a coach. But many business owners, it's daily. They have all these transactions coming in, but we typically have a lot more expense transactions. And your ability to track that provides a lot of clarity come time for tax preparation, whether you're doing it yourself or you're hiring a CPA or bookkeeper or so on and so forth. So tracking income and expenses is a big deal. Finding some software.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of software available out there to do that.
Yeah.
So, and the other last thing I'll throw out is, if you are a small business owner, particularly if you drive a lot as a business owner, track your mileage. Your mileage is a huge deduction. There's that word again, huge. Track your mileage. There are lots of apps. I recommend, there's like 3 or 4 in the back of my book that I talk about as suggestions. Everlance, Mile IQ, there's a couple others I forget, to track mileage. That's a big deal. You save yourself a lot of headaches and get a big deduction for tracking your mileage.
I did like 2 months of DoorDash at the beginning, like January, February, and I'm one of those who, like, I'm already on TurboTax, like entering as much information as I can. And I entered those miles, even though like I didn't drive a whole lot. It was like maybe 100 miles. When it said that I had a $48 like deduction, like
that's, yeah. Yeah. And in 2022, the IRS did they haven't done this in years. The first half of the year, I forget what the actual number is. It was something like, for 2022, it was something like 55 cents for the first half. And the second half of the year, they increased it 2 or 3 cents. I want to say up to 58 cents. So don't quote me on the numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head. But that was, they rarely do that, but they recognized inflation and the cost of everything. So your mileage in 2022, if you drive 100 miles, that's worth $55 or over 50, certainly. I don't know the math in my head. That's a huge deduction. It's really, really big. So I hope anyone seeing this, that you tracked your miles for 2022. And if you didn't, that's okay. Going forward in 2023, start tracking your miles, please. That will help you.
yes, that's the thing about coaches, is we focus on what to do in the future.
In the future, yeah.
So how would somebody figure out how much they should set aside for taxes for the IRS?
Yes, great question. So typically what I like to tell people is, if you owed $1,000 or more on your prior year's tax return, and we're assuming you're self-employed, and you may or may not have a wage job, or your spouse has a wage job as well. If you owe $1,000 or more, and you're self-employed, you need to start setting money aside to send to the IRS. That's the first thing. And so, as you say, how much? Well, you can really dive deep into tax planning, tax strategy to understand how much is the right amount. But a good general number is 10%. 10% is easy to figure out for most people. We get 10% conceptually. It's not a lot of math involved. And is it going to be the exact amount? Honestly, probably not. Okay. It's just, and the more you make, the more you need to send in. But here's my argument for people that say 10%, that's not enough. Okay, you may be right, but 10% is better than nothing.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. People are not sending any money in. So if you even send in 10%, you're way ahead of the game, way ahead of the game. So 10%, easy to figure out, simple to send in. And again, as you go along in your business, if you've been in an established business for some time, you might need some tax planning, some tax strategy to really know, I got to be sending in 25%. Yes, 25 cents for every dollar you make, you may need to send to the IRS, which is ridiculous. I know where, I didn't get in business to pay money to the IRS. I got into business to make some money for myself, but this is the tax system that we have right now. So this is what we have to do. But that's just a good, 10%. That's a great starting place. Even if you've been in business for a while, 10% is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
Does it make your job easier as an IRS enrolled agent if somebody did send something in and they still run into trouble? Like, does that make your job easier so you can go back and say, hey, these guys like made signs of good faith? Or
Absolutely.
okay.
Yes,
Awesome.
that's a great question, because when I help people, get out of their mess with the IRS, there's two things that have to happen to negotiate a deal with the IRS. You must be current and you must be compliant. And the current means got to have at least 6 years of tax returns filed. Period. End of story.
Okay.
That's current. And compliant means, oh, I'm self-employed. I need to be sending in some estimated payments to the IRS. Just as you said, good faith. If you have been making estimated payments and you are still in trouble with the IRS, and you actually need the kind of help that I offer, you have a pattern, you have a good history. If you've been making these payments, you maybe haven't been, maybe you need to increase from 10% up to 25%, to change things going forward. But yes, you're absolutely right. You have this good pattern, and that matters. Intent. So I worked at the IRS for 7 years, and almost 7 years. And one of the things that I came to understand about the IRS is your intent. They call it taxpayer intent. It really matters. Taxpayer intent is very, very important. So if you've been making small payments, estimated payments all along, you've been doing the right thing. Your intent is true. It's good. You're trying to be compliant. So that matters.
That's awesome.
Great question.
What else would you want our audience to know about what you do or how to stay out of trouble with the IRS?
Oh gosh. Well, if you find yourself in trouble with the IRS, or maybe you're not sure, maybe you owe $10,000 or $15,000, which could feel insurmountable. I want to say that it's not necessarily insurmountable. There are things that I can do for you potentially that you're not gonna, it's not that you won't have to pay that $10,000 or $15,000, but we'll figure out the best plan for you based on your current circumstances, how this will be resolved. And that may be, I can get you in a protected status where you don't have to pay anything, even though you owe 10 or 15,000 or more. You don't have to pay anything right now. You get a year's reprieve, some breathing space to get your finances in order, to really sit with Tracy and figure out what it is you're doing, and get your finances in order, and then come back and visit in a year and say, okay, now I'm ready. I've got $250 a month. I can send the IRS and get this tax debt taken care of. So just because you owe doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have to pay. Although in most circumstances, you probably will end up paying something. That's because you owe. If you owe, you owe, and you're at where you're at. But there are things we can do to help postpone the payment or show the IRS, no, I don't have $750 a month or $2,000 a month to send you. I don't have that.
Yeah.
I can show the IRS, oh, they've only got $300, and that's legit. And this is what we do. So that's an important thing, important part of my work that I do for people. You're going to have to pay, but maybe not as much.
Awesome.
Maybe not as frequently. So I want people to know that if they're already on making payments and they can't afford them, we can fix that potentially.
Yeah. A question that I run into quite a bit with people who are already working with an IRS enrolled agent, or they've garnered a payment plan themselves with the IRS, is where does this fall in the debt snowball?
The debt snowball.
Real quick, audience, we're both Ramsey preferred coaches. The debt snowball is where you list your debts out from smallest amount owed to largest amount owed, not looking at the interest rate, not looking at monthly payments, paying minimums on everything except the smallest amount, throwing everything you can at the smallest one and rolling it over. So that's the debt snowball. That works with people's behaviors versus the numbers, because the behavior is what typically gets people into trouble anyway.
Exactly.
So if somebody has a debt that is more than what they owe the IRS, let's just say student loans or massive car payments, etc., would you still recommend paying the IRS first? Because Dave Ramsey says pay your family and pay the IRS first, no matter how much you owe.
Family is always first. Always, always, always. And if it comes down to we can only afford to pay the family first, the IRS takes a back seat always. And that's what I was talking about a minute ago, is you have to negotiate with the IRS to say, look, I don't have any money except to feed my family and keep the lights on, and gas in the car. And the IRS recognizes that. So they take a back seat and they wait. And so you're not paying the IRS, but we'll assume for this purposes that you do have some money to pay the IRS. Part of paying the IRS is figuring out how much you can pay them and then putting that amount into the debt snowball. We do like to list the IRS first because the IRS, the penalties and the interest, that's a weight to carry, and the IRS has power. They can levy your wages. They can put a garnishment on your wages potentially, or levy your bank account, garnish your wages. Those are very extreme circumstances, and those don't just happen like that. You have to really ignore letters from the IRS to get to a wage garnishment or some kind of levy on your bank. That's really extreme. So that's why one of the reasons why we put the IRS near the top or at the top of the debt snowball, but always your family first. And if you don't have any extra money to pay, then that's what we tell the IRS, and they have to wait.
Yeah. So. Awesome. Yep. Same page for sure. Well, Kristine, if somebody is in trouble with the IRS and they would love to have a conversation with you and work with you, how do they get in contact with you?
So they can call me. I have a Google Voice number that's out in the general public, and that number is 737-234-0196. I'll say it again, 737-234-0196. That's out on my website. That's on my email. I have a couple of radio shows I'm on. That's what I put out on the airwaves. It's in my book. So if you don't want to read, my book is an audiobook as well. And it's on all the major audio retailers, Nook and Spotify, iTunes. It's out there. I think it's like $4.99 or something. So my number is in the book. But doing that, and you can email me at Kristine at KristineStevensonEA.com.
Awesome. Wonderful. Kristine, thank you so much for this conversation today. Like, you offer hope to people who just feel like they're weighed down and in trouble, as it were,
Yes, yes,
and are feeling like they're on the doorstep of losing everything they have.
yes. And I hate that people feel like that. And I can help. I can help. I can help.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
So if you owe the IRS money, whether you're small business, or personal, please give Kristine a call. She is fantastic. She's helped clients of mine as well that I've referred to her. She knows her stuff and she can get the job done. And it sounds like she is a bulldog when it comes to facing the IRS. Kristine, thank you so much for joining me today. It was an honor, and I will just be sharing your information with as many people as I can.
Thank you, Tracy. I really appreciate it. It was fun to be here with you.
Thank you.